I rise just to speak briefly, if you will, Mr. President, in reference to, and I'm usually not at a loss for words, Mr. President, but in this circumstance, I'm having a little bit difficulty. And I think many of you in this room, many of our colleagues in this room, and those who may be paying attention and who have watched both local, statewide, and national news have seen the horrendous acts that have occurred over a number of years in an alleged health care facility that has been operating for several decades in this state, in the city of Philadelphia, and in fact in my senatorial district. It has been referred to on CNN, MSNBC, Fox, every news broadcast, any website that you can come up with has talked about the incredibly barbaric activities that have occurred in this facility under the name of the Women's Medical Society, run by a gentleman who calls himself a doctor by the name of Kermit Gosnell. I have in my possession, Mr. President, a copy of the grand jury report that was released last week under the name of our district attorney, Seth Williams, that refers in graphic detail of the activities that occurred at this facility, not over years, but over decades. The number of women who were maimed, those babies who were killed, the kind of activities that were going on there, Mr. President, that I think many members are aware of, can read about if they are so interested in online, can see the grand jury report, indicate that there was a kind of practice that none of us ever thought anyone could be involved in, at least anyone who considered themselves a practitioner of one of the most important practices that we have, that being a practitioner of medicine, a doctor of medicine. Clearly, what was represented in this activity, assuming that everything in this grand jury report is in fact true and correct, could be your worst horror movie that you could see. What we need to understand, Mr. President, is that the practices that have been talked about, the barbaric activities that have been talked about by Dr. Gosnell, were only divulged because of other criminal activities that he was involved in. Gosnell's office was being investigated for the trafficking of pharmaceuticals, OxyContin specifically. It's alleged that he was one of the largest traffickers of this drug in the region. It was as a result of that investigation that all of these other activities became public in such a public fashion. So clearly here's an individual who had operated beyond the parameters of any agreed upon or known normal medical activity. He was a criminal in every sense of the word, on activities beyond what publicly has been discussed. When we were first notified of this investigation over a year ago, we worked with our Department of Health and Department of State, and at that time I was the Democratic chairman of the Health and Welfare Committee. I reached across the aisle to our majority chair, Senator Vance, who worked very closely with us to work with the two departments to get them to further investigate and shut down the activities going on there. And the activities were shut down almost immediately. It is a result of the resulting grand jury report that we know exactly what was going on there. And what we have to do now, Mr. President, is encourage in every sense of the form that we can that the criminal side of our system of justice pursue with great vigor the prosecution of Dr. Gosnell and any related in those activities. That is their responsibility, and we want to encourage them to fully pursue that to every level that they can. Every level. What we intend to do on our side in consultation with both Democrat and Republican leaders here in this chamber is use every aspect that we have available to us as senators to make sure that that kind of activity is not going on anywhere else in the Commonwealth and that has no chance of being repeated from now and into the future. That is our responsibility. We have to operate in a way that is thoughtful but very aggressive. We have to operate in a way that gets to the bottom of where the holes in the system existed so that we can fill those holes in with the right public policy to make sure that we can protect the lives of millions of people in this Commonwealth, especially in this case, Mr. President, the lives of low-income women. So I rise at this point, Mr. President, just to speak on this matter. It has been several days since we found out the information contained in the grand jury report, and clearly all of us have been appalled and overwhelmed about the kinds of, as I've said, barbaric activities that occurred in that practice. But as we gather ourselves to go forward, clearly this is going to be an effort that is going to be utilized on both sides of the aisle. Both sides of the aisle working together to try to get to the bottom so we can fill the holes and make sure that no way, shape, or form any kind of activity like this can occur in the future. Thank you, Mr. President.